Welcome back. In this video, we're going to actually go over some of the dashboard and some of the common components that are in the Red Sky framework. So taking a look at the dashboard page here, again, this is just a very simple page. We're going to actually go ahead and right click and inspect this in Google Chrome or Edge or whatever type of tool you want to use. Let me get this thing just slid over just a little bit more. There we go. So what we have here is our dashboard, and if I Control Shift C, I can do my inspector and I can click on items, and you can kind of see here what we have is a div as a label right there. If you look at the class name dashboard, and then underneath that is another label that says plots go here, and then finally we have underneath that another div that's RS box, and we're going to go over what label and RS box are. They're the two most common components that you'll use while at Red Sky with our framework. And then underneath that we have another box that has a class of theme buttons with click theme blue and theme green. Basically what we did is we kind of made buttons here out of boxes instead of buttons, but we'll go over that in just a second. So and that's really it for the page. The actual page itself, if you kind of hover over it, you'll see it has an RS page and it has a page component. It also has this dashboard page component. So now let's go, with that in mind, let's go to the actual code and see how this is actually constructed. Here we are with the dashboard page. This is the entire content of kind of everything that we saw there. And we have all of our imports up there. We have a functional component right there, a couple functions and recoil state, which we'll go to later. And then we have a component called page with a class name of RS dashboard. We have a label and another label, the box nested inside and nested inside. So very simple kind of page to start off with. Let's say we wanted to actually go ahead and add some more labels. So if I wanted to, I'd just kind of hit maybe up here, I can type label, and what we have is we have the ability to say variant. It's not required, but pretty much most of the time you'll want to be able to say variant, and you'll say something like an H5. So that's the type that we're going to use up there, and I'm going to say this is an H5 label. If I just tab away from this and go back to here, you'll see that the page refreshes and we get this is an H5 label right there, and it's just kind of sitting right here. And if we actually inspect it, we can see it's not necessarily an H5 tag, but it has an H5 class on that. That is one thing that will most likely be changing in a future framework, where instead of a div it would say an H5, but for right now it says div. It has a style of H5. So let's go ahead and look at the H5 label and where do these settings come from. If I go back to the quick start and I go to the themes, I can see that I have a labels SCSS file, and essentially what we're doing is we're targeting the class of RS label nested these different H1, H2, H3, H4s, and so in here we can actually influence that, and just to show you for sure we can do this, let me just put a massively crazy 24 pixel kind of font in there, come back here, 54, and you can see it just grew really large. Now the line height didn't change, which is why we're kind of getting that bled over into there, and you would control that possibly with a 60 pixel. Let's see if that looks like that. Yep, so now it's spaced out, has a little bit of that spacing in between each one. I'm going to go and undo those, and let's go back to the dashboard page. Notice that this one was missing a variant, so again we could add a variant of H3. That goes on there. This one is playing a little bit with some margin left. With these labels and these boxes, we have a lot of props that you can actually play with. So if say we wanted to space between the plots go here text and this one there, we could say a margin bottom, or we can just say MB for short. So MB equals, I don't know, 24 pixels. And we like to do things in multiples of 8. So you'll see 8, 16, 24, 32 is kind of a lot of common spacing in there. So there we go. If we look at these plots, it has this margin down there. I can click on it. You can see it has a margin bottom of 24 on there. I can do the same thing with this one to space out the margin here to 32 pixels between here and those buttons. There it goes. It spaced it out down below. What we're going to do next is play a little bit with the box. So let's go ahead and create a box. And what I want to do is I want to have some nested boxes showing you kind of how to do flex in here. So we're going to put a display flex. Well, first of all, let me just create some boxes on the inside. So I'm going to say a box, and we have width and height controls. So I'm going to say width is, I don't know, 50 pixels. And notice when I just say 50, it would assume pixels. So height of 50. I'm going to give it a background color of, I don't know, green. This one I do have to put in quotes there. I could come back here, like I said, and do 50 pixels in there, or characters, or whatever you want to do for your type, that your units there. And I'm going to close that one out, and then I'll create another box, and I'm going to make this one, I don't know, width of 75 and a height of 75 and a color of orange. Let's go back to what we have here. So there we have our green box, and there we have an orange box. But let's say I want to have these as a flex children of a flex container. I want them to be all in the same line, kind of next to each other. So I come up to the parent box, and I can say display flex, in quotes, flex. And if we go back to there, it'll put them all in the same line. But now let's say I want to have some spacing in here. Well, flex traditionally didn't have a gap parameter. What you used to have to do is kind of put a margin left on this guy, which you could do. You come down here and you'd say margin left, 24 pixels, and it would redraw, and there we have our margin right there. But flex actually now has gap. It was something that was introduced originally for grid, but you can actually use it in a flex container. So I could say put a gap of 24 between those guys, and it should just look just like that. How you can tell whether flex has certain types of things is there's a really great site called Can I Use, and I can come up here and type in gap, and you can see the gap property for Flexbox, and you can see the global usage percentage right there. Normally I like to be above 90%, but the gap property is just so nice to be able to use that that I'm kind of making an exception here. So other cool things on Can I Use, you can see the versions where Safari maybe introduced this, which was 14.1. You can see it was released on April 25th of 2021, and all that kind of stuff. But one cool thing is you can kind of click up here, and you can see where is the non 100% coming from. Well, most of it is from older versions of iOS and Safari, so they're not going to support that, and some kind of older versions of Chrome, which was released on 2020. This one is 2020 as well, September 15th and such there. So, it's kind of a nice little tool, but I digress. Going back here, now let's say I want to center these things. You would have a flex, typically you have a flex align items, and you can say center in there. And so now they're going to be centered within each other. Let me put, just to make this flex box a little bit easier, I'm going to add a border of a 1 pixel solid black in there. Come back here, and so now you can see that it clearly is centered within the flex container there. We also have access to other things. We can say a padding of 24 pixels all around that. And so they should now be within that, padded in there. So when you think about padding and margin, you want to use paddings when you're trying to take a container and shoving the children components inside of it. You can obviously use padding to space stuff too, but we want to standardize it and say we're going to use margins to space, maybe this plots go here and the H5 go there, and not necessarily padding. I know it'll work the same, but it makes more sense to think of padding there. So if I say padding bottom I can say there, and you'll see it's the same, but we want to use margins to space stuff around, and then padding to space it within the box model there. And it makes sense if you actually look at the computed box model. So you'll have your actual content, you'll have your padding, you'll have your border, and then your margin is what kind of positions it around from other components on there. So we will go back to just a margin bottom on that, and we're down there. There we go, we have that. Now let's say I want to actually make a grid container. Actually, before we go on to that, one thing that might start to ask yourself is, well, how long should I go with these props? Those look pretty long. Eventually they're going to get hard to read if I keep on adding on this. Maybe I add a border radius of 50%, which goes there, and well, 50% is huge. Let's say like a 10 pixel kind of border radius. There we go. These start kind of really stacking up, and so when that gets to the case, what I like to do is typically cut out all those props there and give it a class name. We're just going to say this is our flex box container or something. And then what we would do is we would go to the SCSS file that's related here. We have our RS dashboard, and we're going to nest all of our properties underneath this. So what did I call that? Dashboard. I called that a flex box container, okay? And dot flex box container. And I like to just kind of paste these things. Even though this is not standard SCSS, I just comment it out, and then I just go down the line. So I say display flex, and a gap of 24 pixels, and align items of center. Obviously IDEs are really great with auto-completing. 1 pixel solid black. Padding of 24 pixels, border radius 10 pixels, delete the comment out, and if we go back to the page, if it refreshes, it should look exactly the same, so that's great. Okay, what we want to do here is we're going to go over grid as well. So grid displays are really important to be able to use that. One thing you can do with this ID is you can pin these tabs. So you notice all my tabs are up here. I can kind of start closing some of these things down, but you can pin a tab real quick to the left side. So that stays over there. You can pin this tab also. So no matter what happens, these tabs are kind of over there. I can use Alt left and right to kind of toggle between them. Coming back down here, I'm going to create a box, and I'm going to create, take these just as for fun, and maybe paste them again. And if we come back here, we should see them all just kind of vertically next to each other. I'm going to now make this a display of grid, which, let's see if we just look at it, looks like that, because we haven't given the grid any structure yet. So we can come back here and do a grid template columns, and we can say, 1 FR, 1 flex ratio, 1 flex ratio, 1 flex ratio, and so now they should all be kind of spaced out evenly throughout there. And if we actually take off and we say, width is 100% on these guys, so 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, it should go. So now that they kind of fill their whole area, and again, we can apply some gap to that now. So we say gap of, 16 pixels. And now we have our gaps in between each one. So again, the box is a very flexible where you can just really quickly apply some styles to it, have those all in there, and do fun stuff like that. The last component I'm going to show before we kind of end this video is our button component. So if we bring in button, you can start typing it, and the IDEs will typically autocomplete. They'll ask if you want to import, or sometimes they'll auto import. You can click there, hit Alt Enter. You can see it now got brought in up there. Close it, and we can say it clicked me. But you notice it's still red underline. In our framework, we have a property called look that is required. So we could say look is a contain primary button. And so now if we come back here, we have a click me button that's right there. Clicking it does nothing, but it does have a nice little ripple effect that's on there. If we want to, we could now add an on-click handler. If we just wanted to kind of just quickly do an anonymous function, arrow function, we could do that. Say console.log, I'm clicked, we do that. And so we click, you can see I'm click is incrementing each time I click. Now let's say I wanted to make this a function instead of that, and maybe have a lot more logic than a simple console log. I can do something kind of neat in a lot of IDEs. You can actually just start typing the function name that you want to create. So in this time, with our on-click handlers, we always put our handlers as handle, and then whatever you want to do. So handle click me button or so. The IDE will notice like, hey, I don't know what this is. It's red. I can click on it and hit Alt Enter, and there's a number of options, but I'm going to hit create a function called there. It'll ask me where I want to put it, whether I want to put it globally or whether I want to put it inside this dashboard function. I'll just hit enter, and now we have our handle click button, and we'll just say console.log handled click. Save it, and we click here, we have our handle click. So again, we could duplicate this and have click me too and do all this kind of stuff. So our framework does allow you to quickly and rapidly put in components and pull it out. We've built a number of components that we'll kind of be going over and building upon in these videos. So that'll be it for this video. Hope this was helpful.